My name is Morgan Harrell. I'm an ambassador for Artemis in South Carolina, and we've been doing monthly fireside chats. And last month we did one, we talked about wild food. This month we had some interest in doing some foraging. So we found Safiyyah, who is a ambassador for Artemis, a new ambassador for Artemis in North Carolina.
I live in North Carolina, and I started foraging pretty much as soon as I moved here. Just starting with the easy stuff. Pretty much what I'm showing now is what I started with, I guess 6 years ago or so. And then from there, I just kind of, my curiosity peaked and I just kept, what's this, what's that, what's this, is it edible? And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I started hunting and fishing and all of that, but that's a different story. A lot of these are introduced. Most of them are introduced. Some are invasive and things like that, but we'll get into all that. So, okay, first, safety, right? Never put anything in your mouth unless you're 100% sure that it's edible. Now, all of these that I'll show have no poisonous lookalikes. They might have some lookalikes, but they'd be edible or not really harmful in any way. And even if something is edible and you know it is, eat it in small amounts at first to ensure no reaction, because everyone's different. So people might have allergies. It's something that you've never had before. Just eat a little bit, wait a day, you feel fine, then have at it. Now, as far as the plant and the ethics of harvesting and foraging, you want to know the status of the plant. So is it native? Is it invasive? Is it just introduced and thriving? Is it rare, at risk, things like that. Now, again, the ones I'm showing you, you don't have to really worry about that. You can pretty much harvest your heart's content, just leave some for the bees, leave some to go to seed, unless they're super, super invasive and destructive, in which case just have at it. And then the third thing, after you know the status and whether you can even harvest at all, know how the plant propagates and know its life cycle, how long its life cycle is, how long it takes to get to seed, how does it propagate and make new plants. You have perennials, which come back every year so long as the root is intact. You have biennials, which take 2 years to go to seed. And then you have annuals, which have to go to seed every year and start from seed again. And then what part are you harvesting? Are you harvesting the flowers, which have to mature to go to seed? Are you harvesting leaves? Are you harvesting the bark? Are you harvesting roots, in which case you have to kill the whole plant? Or are you harvesting seeds? So you have to keep all those things in mind. So endangered, rare, protected, leave it alone. That's all I'm going to say. Common, flourishing, again, you got to think about what part you need and the life cycle of the plant. General rule, leaves and things like that, you will harvest a third of the population and you leave 2/3. That's a general rule. Things that have really long life cycles, like trout lilies, or if we get into ginseng, they take years, decades, sometimes even to mature. You want to be taking less than that. But for the most part, a third is a general rule. Okay, so like I said before, so you have perennials, biennials, and annuals. Perennials come back to life every year. Biennials live 2 years. Annuals are yearly. And then propagation, generally, you have two things. You have rhizomes, which they can spread underground through their root system. And these are generally very prolific. And all of the ones I'm going to show you today are perennials that spread by rhizome and can also spread by seed. There are things that spread by seed that are self-seeding. And then there are things that need, male and female and all of those things. Self-seeding are generally more prolific, and things that need both male and female are generally have a harder time to propagate. So 2 examples, right? If I want the flower of an annual plant, I have to keep in mind that it's not going to be able to go to seed. So I'm essentially killing its, I'm not letting it go to the next generation. So I want to harvest probably less than a third, if at all, really. And then another example, if I want the roots of a perennial plant, it doesn't really matter that it's perennial because I'm uprooting it, so I'm killing it. So again, I want to be mindful of how much I'm harvesting. Now, if I'm harvesting something that's a perennial and just the above ground, I can harvest almost all of it. I just want to leave some to go to seed. And again, this goes back to native, if it's native or endangered or things like that. So you just have to keep these things into account to be ethical about your foraging. All right, let's get to it. So dandelion, which most of you probably know, but there is a lookalike, a few lookalikes, again, none of which are poisonous or anything. I thought I knew dandelion, and it turns out I did not at the time when I first started because I got it confused with some lookalikes. But I'll show you how to make sure that it is dandelion. So dandelion will only have 1 stalk per plant and 1 flower per stalk. A lot of the lookalikes might have a few flowers per stalk or a few stalks per plant. And so that's probably the main indicator of dandelion, one stalk, one flower. And then if you look at the leaves, they're kind of sharp, they're sharply lobed. Other lookalikes will be round in the leaf, and that's a good indicator too. And then dandelion will have a hollow stem and milky sap, but the lookalikes also have hollow stems and milky sap, so that doesn't really help. But that's just I guess, so you know, kind of thing. And as far as edibility, it's edible from root to flower. So flowers are edible, the leaves and stem, everything. The root is a good, people use it as a coffee substitute. You roast them and you grind them and use a coffee substitute. I don't think it tastes like coffee, but try it for yourself. It's very medicinal though. It's highly nutritious. The leaves are edible, although very bitter. So you do want to get the young leaves. Flowers are edible, and a lot of people, including myself, like to make syrup out of the flowers, and it kind of tastes like honey. So that's some things you could do, something very, very, very easy. Just make sure in the beginning of the season, leave some for the bees because it is the first food for them, and make sure nothing is sprayed, obviously. Okay, so my favorite lookalike of dandelion is Japanese false hawksbeard. And I put the scientific name because the common name, there's a bunch of common names. So the difference, if you look at the leaves, you see how they're round and they're not sharp. And then the flower, there's multiple flowers per stem, and it gets much, much bigger. If we have time, I'll go out my backyard and show you. I actually prefer the leaves of this plant. They're less bitter. And then again, the whole thing is edible. Other dandelion lookalikes are cat's ear and sow thistle. I just didn't want to show them here because they're not as interesting. But something definitely to Google for sure. Again, none of these are poisonous. They're all actually edible. Okay, plantain is one of the first ones I learned and one of my favorites. The young leaves are edible, cooked or raw. The older ones, technically they're edible as well. They just get very stringy. If you look in the bottom picture, see those strings when you pull the leaf in half, that's an ID, also an indicator that it's plantain, where you'll have some strings sticking out in the older leaves. So technically edible, but just not pleasant to chew. Medicinally, they're actually antibacterial, soothing, relieves itching, promotes healing. It's great for bug bites and sunburns and all sorts of things with your skin. It really is a do-all, be-all kind of thing. And I use it in a few of my products, topical products, but it's a big, big ingredient in my anti-itch products. And thing in the field too, you can just chew it. If you get a cut or something, just chew it up and get all the juices out and just rub it on that cut, and it's a great field first aid. All right, wood sorrel, my favorite tasting one. It tastes citrusy. It's totally unexpected. It just hits you. It's tangy and absolutely delicious. The two pictures on the right are just regular yellow wood sorrel, so the flowers will be yellow. Now, a lot of people mistake them for clover, which I'll show you as well, but wood sorrel has heart-shaped leaves. So if you can see the heart in the picture, and then sometimes in the bottom picture, they'll fold and they just kind of looks like an X, I guess, or something. So that happens too, and that it makes them kind of stick out in the ground when they do that. Very, very delicious. They do have a high oxalic acid content, kind of like spinach. So if your doctor says not to eat spinach, then you can probably have a taste of these, but you shouldn't be eating too many. And then these pretty purple ones have purple flowers, and they taste the exact same. They're just a different species, and they have purple flowers, and they're a lot prettier, but equally delicious. Medicinally,
Safiyyah, I feel like I saw these.
Yep.
I feel like I saw these in the woods this morning. I was I think I'm echoing on your other phone. I think it was a pine stand, and we were just kind of walking through the undergrowth. I mean, obviously these things don't grow just in people's yard, but is there anything that, are you fixing to go to lookalikes on this, or is there?
Only lookalike is clover, but I'll show you the difference.
Okay, I think that's what I saw, because it was definitely had that purpley look and the green around it.
Yeah, and that heart shape is really what gives it away when the purple isn't there. Yeah, they're delicious. Like seriously, my favorite.
Should have tried it.
And then medicinally, they're really high in vitamin C, and they've been used as teas for fevers, UTIs, for nausea, mouth sores, and as a general, they're believed to be a blood cleanser. Yeah, and that's about that. So clover, as in, if we look at the leaf, so I'll just show you real quick. So like, look at the heart shape on these, and then clover is just, oh, now they don't all have that white line. White clovers will have that, but they're just like little flower petals almost. And so you have white and red clover. I don't have any red clovers around, so I didn't show, but it's the same flower, just pinkish. And yeah, same thing, edible. You can eat it raw, but apparently it tastes better boiled. I've never boiled it myself. You have red and white varieties, both of which are edible. And then they're both considered to be blood purifiers. They're used as an eye wash and for fevers and colds. Red clover is famed for also relieving menstrual and menopausal symptoms. But the problem is red clover doesn't propagate as easily and doesn't live as long. So you generally see white clovers more, but red clovers are a real treat if you can find them, especially medicinally. So yeah, just clovers and wood sorrels are very easily mistaken. Just look for that heart shape and you know you have a sorrel. You can also taste it. Wood sorrel will have that citrus, it'll hit you, you can't miss it, and clover will not. All right, chickweed is my second favorite. It literally, if you get the hairless variety, so there's a few different varieties. There's mouse ear chickweed, which is a little hairy, which is the one on what the flower is actually on the left, but the flowers all look the same pretty much. And then you have common chickweed, which is the two pictures on the right. And common chickweed, it just tastes like lettuce to me. So if you, yep.
Before you move on from clover, we had a question on, is red clover the same as purple clover?
Purple clover? I've never heard of purple clover. It might be. Look up the scientific names and that'll tell you if they're the same.
There are like tons of kinds of clover though. I mean,
yeah.
Like for like food, when we do food plots for our deer, there's, do we want this one? And some of them like sun, some of them don't like sun. I mean, there's a whole variety of clovers, red, white, whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Red and white are your most common ones. I've never seen in the wild. I've never seen other types. I know some are just like you can buy them, like they're genetically changed or whatever. But as far as wild, I've seen white and red, which is actually more of a pink. So yeah, definitely something to look up though. Again, just make sure it's not, I doubt it would be poisonous. Clover also has the high oxalic acid content. So if you can't eat spinach, then you can't have high amounts of clover. It is just a compound that if you're prone to kidney stones or if you have rheumatoid arthritis specifically, it won't sit well with you. Okay, so yeah, chickweed, medicinally, topically, I use it also in a lot of my itch creams and a few other of my creams and topical stuff. It's great for calming the skin, itching, eczema, acne, just a great balancer of things. High in vitamin C as well. And medicinally is taken traditionally for bowel problems, obesity, lung problems, and muscle or joint pain. Not very strong though, so it would, if you have actual like a lot of pain, you'd want to take it with other things that are a little more advanced, but just traditionally what they've been used for. And absolutely delicious. They'll grow in patches a lot too. That's why I showed that picture in the bottom. It's just a big old mess. So sometimes it's a little hard to spot. So if you just get a little close and you look at that pattern, the stem and the leaves, once you see it a couple times, you'll know it. And the flower is a good indicator too, but it flowers, it's an epimeral, so it's very short-lived. It has that 5-petal flower and it has a little slit, if you can see, in the middle between the petals, but not always. Yeah, chickweed, a great lawn weed. And then you have purple dead nettle. Again, easy to ID. Some people confuse it with henbit, but I didn't have any in my yard to show. It doesn't always have that little purple on top. When it's young, it might have that green. It might just be green. It's in the mint family, so it'll have a square stem. I think you can kind of see the shadow in that top picture. And yeah, just again, it'll grow in fields if in some lawns. It's edible, whether raw or cooked. It's a little fuzzy raw. I don't really like the texture of it raw. But it's great. I put in omelets or anything, and then it's great for smoothies. I don't really drink green smoothies, but if you do, it's highly nutritious. And pesto, it's really good in pesto. Add some garlic, add some wild ramps if you can find them. And it makes a really, really nice pesto. Again, highly nutritious. The flowers, and actually not just the flowers, but all of it really infused in oil are great for sore muscles. And it's another one, it's just absolutely phenomenal for your skin. I have it in something I plan to make just for like an everyday cream kind of thing. It's great. Cleavers, this is a fun one. Nothing in the woods.
Question. I'm trying to keep us. I don't want you to go back and shoot through your slides. How can you tell the difference between that and henbit?
Henbit doesn't. So the leaves are different. Henbit has round, kind of. How do I explain? I'd have to a picture. I should have put a picture up there, but I didn't have any. So okay. So look at the leaf shape. The leaf shape is kind of like a, I guess almost like a heart, not quite. Henbit isn't like that. It's round and it has almost like a cloud, like half a cloud kind of shape. And it's
can y'all see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the leaves are more serrated. There you go, that's the word. And they're round.
Can you see that, Sarah? Okay. This is the book I keep referencing too. I'm going to pause and give a plug for this one. Sarah, Ashley told us about this one, Southeast Foraging by Chris Bennett. It's very handy. So I keep referencing, so I'm like, oh, that's what she's talking about. It's in the book.
Yeah, I'll talk about in the end some tips about IDing and things like that. All right, cleavers are a fun one. These are, I don't know how to describe the leaf shape. You just look at it. And there's really not anything in the woods like that. Well, there probably is, but nothing that sticks. So it's called cleavers. And it literally, I don't know if you can tell, that's me standing up. That's a shirt. And that thing is stuck to my shirt. If you touch it, if you feel it, it has like almost little mini Velcro things. And it is like Velcro. It will stick to your pants. It'll stick to whatever. And the seeds do that too when it goes to seed. So this makes it, technically it is edible raw, but this makes it extremely uncomfortable to eat raw because it will scratch up your throat like crazy. But once you cook it down a little bit, those hairs settle and you can just chew it down and it's pretty good. I prefer it. Something I really like to do is just take that and put it in water and then put it in the fridge and just let it sit for a few days and let it infuse slowly. And it just tastes like that fancy water they have at restaurants. And it's famed for being a lymphatic cleanser, both topically and internally. So if you're getting over a cold or you just want to clear up your lymphatic system, tea of this a few days a week, a few times a day for a week or two, it'll really have you feeling good internally. And it's great for skin. You can rub it if you have swollen lymph nodes. You can infuse it in oil for a month and rub that oil on your lymph nodes and it'll make you feel great. Also popular in smoothies. Yeah, it's a great, phenomenal herb. This one is a cool one. They're not fruiting yet. Mock strawberry or false strawberry. And so anyone who grows strawberries, you might see this and think, oh, that kind of looks like a little mini strawberry. It does. So the leaves are very similar to strawberry leaves, just tinier. If you can see my fingers for scale. And the flowers are yellow instead of white. And they fruit. I didn't have a picture of fruit because they're not fruiting, but I didn't want to use like someone else's picture, copyright, but definitely look it up. They don't taste great. I mean, they don't taste bad. They just taste like an unripe strawberry, almost like the white part of a strawberry. It's not really, doesn't have that sweet strawberry taste, but it doesn't taste bad. So it's great for fillers and smoothies, or if you want to dip them in chocolate or something, add some sweetness to them. They're great and they're everywhere, easy to identify. Nothing really looks like it at all, at least when it's fruiting. You can make jams, smoothies, jellies, anything you do with the fruit. You can also eat the leaves, although I wouldn't recommend it for a beginner because it's just a generic 3-leaf plant. But the plant is an anticoagulant. It's thought to be a fever reducer, good for stomach issues, laryngitis, and acute tonsillitis. So again, a lot of these weeds, I mean, they're just so overlooked, but they're just phenomenal for you inside and out.
Safiyyah, is the fruit red? Is it on the mock strawberry? Does it look like a little strawberry?
Kinda, yeah. It's more oval and not quite like triangle shape. And the seeds are more, when you feel it, it's a lot bumpier than a regular strawberry, but it's red, and there's no fruit that looks like it in our area, at least in the southeast, that grows like that. You know, with those leaves with the yellow flower, there's just not anything like it.
Okay.
That's poisonous, at least, for sure. And then here we got wild chives or wild onion. They go by different names, so I put the scientific up there. It's the Allium species, and it's literally, you break that leaf, and you smell it, and it smells like garlic. So it's really easy to ID. You pull it out the ground. There's a little bulb. You just use it like chives. You chop up the above ground parts and use garnish or whatever you use chives for. You can make pesto. You can soups, whatever. It's like chives you'd buy from the store. Now, the leaves, when they get older, like the top parts, they'll get a little fibrous and stuff. So the best things to do with that is to dry it out and grind it and use it as a spice, like a seasoning. But again, it's edible. It's just as far as texture. And as medicinally, it's pretty much not as medicinal as garlic is famed for, but it's good for stimulating appetite and aiding in digestion. And the tea is a mild anti-parasitic. It's not strong to the point where it might kill anything, but it's a good preventative, or if you think you might have something. Greenbrier, someone mentioned foraging this. These are awesome. These are more in the woods, not so much because they need trees and stuff, they're vines. The vines themselves suck because they will poke you and tear your clothes and everything. You can see the briars. But those little tips, those fresh tips, they're soft and just absolutely delicious. Deer love them too. So if you're in an area that's highly populated with deer, you'll see the tops just chopped off because it's one of the first things that's green and new and delicious in the winter, or like right after winter. And it's just a great snack. I was hunting turkeys on opening weekend last week, and these were kind of all around me. I was like, well, and I was just snacking, watching the turkeys. So you only really can eat the new leaves, the tendrils, which are these little thin things that are basically what grab on to branches and stuff as the vine climbs. And you can also eat the shoots, kind of like you would potatoes. I'm sorry, new shoots are growing, but you can also eat the roots, kind of cook them like potatoes or something. Berries are also edible. I've actually never had those because I just haven't caught them, but they are edible. And roots, yeah, you can cook them like potatoes. And then the roots are also considered a diuretic, so they pull water out of your body. You can just make a tea out of it. It is a pain getting the roots though, because you got to find where the vine started. They're just everywhere, and then they can kind of be in there a little bit. And with the briars and stuff, they're hard to pull out. But if you want to get them, they're there and they're good. But my favorite part is the tips, the new growth for sure. All right, this is a pop quiz. Anyone know what these are? I can't see. Can I see the chat? Where do you get it? Okay. Oh, that's
yeah. Put it in there if you. Yeah, put it in the chat.
The roots you can cook like, for greenbrier, you just cook like potatoes. I've never tried it, but from the research I've done, boil them, fry them, whatever. Really, definitely look into it though.
Everybody's saying poison ivy.
Yeah.
Yep. Poison ivy, good job. Okay, so there's, leaves of 3, let it be. It's an okay rule, but I don't like it because there's lots of things that are really tasty that have 3 leaves. So the leaves are going to be smooth. Now, poison oak is different. Poison oak isn't really here. So any West Coasters, poison oak, this does not apply to poison oak. So poison ivy leaves are smooth and they're partially lobed. So you can see some of the leaves have like 1 or 2 lobes. The middle leaf is generally symmetrical, not always, and the side leaves are generally kind of like mittens, like you can see. Again, not always, but generally if you have a big patch, you'll see some of these with this classic kind of structure. A mature vine is going to be very, very, very hairy. So if you've seen like a fat vine on a tree and it has gross looking hairs, poison ivy. And the vine is also has the oils that causes the rashes and stuff. So definitely don't touch that. When they're young, they can kind of look like a bush. They're just growing out of the ground. They haven't found anything to grab onto yet. So look for those leaves, kind of like the one in the left picture. It's not on a tree yet. And when they're young or just budding out, they can have that reddish tint, which you can kind of see in the little one on the left hand corner. A lot of times they'll be shiny, especially in that new growth stage, but not always. So it's a lot of not always, which is kind of frustrating, but definitely a hairy vine, and look for that 3 leaves with the middle being symmetrical and the 2 sides being like mittens. Okay, so blackberries. This is why I mentioned the poison ivy, because blackberries can look a lot like poison ivy. So I put them side by side here. You can see the blackberry leaves are serrated, very finely so, but they're serrated. They don't have that mitten looking thing, and they're a vine, like straight up of, I mean, okay, poison ivy is a vine too, but they don't have that big, fat, hairy trunk looking thing. And easy way to tell, the briars. They're very annoying. I actually very much despise blackberries 9 months, 10 months out of the year because they just are in the way of everything when I'm walking through the woods, and they will hook onto you like nobody's business. But they have blackberries, so can't really be too mad. And yeah, if you look for those briars, it's not poison ivy. Poison ivy doesn't have anything like that. And so obviously blackberries are edible. Out here, they're not too sweet because it rains too much, it's too wet, but they're wild blackberries. And medicinally, a lot of people don't know this, but the leaves can be made as a tea. Also with raspberry leaves, but raspberry leaves have a few more extra benefits. Great for diarrhea, for drying up that diarrhea, and good for sore throats, mouth ulcers, and are very, very high in vitamin C.
Safiyyah, could you just chew on the leaves, or what is it? Does it need to be made like dried and made into a tea?
I mean, I've never tried it. I don't know if it'd be pleasant or taste good, but it won't kill you. You definitely can.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah, anything generally that you can make into a tea, you can chew on. It's just generally they tell you not to because of texture or things like that. Yeah.
Or if it tastes bad, I guess.
Yeah, it might taste bad. Okay, wild violets. Now, just IDing this with the leaves, again, if we have time, I can show you. It can kind of look like a buttercup, a kidney leaf buttercup, I think. Not really. These are more like, you see the curl and like they're more closed. But to a beginner, it almost fooled me once, so I figured. But once that flower pops up, it's a violet. So the leaves are...
Going back to blackberry, sorry, I'm gonna pause on wild violet. How do you ID blackberries versus mulberries?
Oh, mulberry is a tree. I have a mulberry tree. I'll show you guys that. Yeah, mulberry is a tree. The leaves are, it's a small tree.
Are you thinking of dewberries? I bet, Sarah, are you thinking of dewberries? That's what we call them. They're like, they look similar. They're a little bit pinker.
Dewberries are harder to differentiate. There is a trick, I think, with the flowers, but I can't recall with dewberries. But mulberries are completely different. I'll show y'all for sure. Okay, so yeah, the violets, great. I'll just pick the flowers and eat them. The leaves are edible too. The flowers can be candied, so you kind of just dip them in sugar water and cover them in sugar. It's tedious, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. And these, if you pick the flowers, again, just leave some to seed, but they are prolific. They, well, they're not invasive, but they're pretty prolific. You can find them in big patches. They do spread by rhizome, so you don't have to worry. They're perennial. You don't have to worry about too much, but you do want to leave some flowers to seed, because if you think about it, even if something comes back every year, eventually it'll die. So you do want to always have some new seeds every season. Medicinally high in vitamin C, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and thought to be a blood cleanser. It's really great in cough syrups, especially the flower. And the flower also makes a really good ingredient in face creams. It's cooling, it pulls heat out, and it's just the general, the vitamin C helps, and a bunch of other compounds in it. And one thing, so roses are red, violets are blue, but there's also a yellow one. Now, they say, I've eaten them, but they say technically it's not edible. It is, it's just that it can be a laxative and sometimes an emetic in large quantities, which emetic is like something that induces vomiting. But if you eat it, now I'm not saying eat them, but I have just a few. And so they say all of them except the yellow ones are okay to eat. So just to let you know, but they look, if you look at the flower structure, it looks pretty much the same. Just the color is different. The leaves look the same. Everything's the same except the flower color. Okay, so not many mushrooms are out. I got some some small turkey tail out back. I can show you guys that too. But just want to talk about foraging mushrooms. So mushrooms are like fruit trees. If someone shames you for picking mushrooms, tell them to shut up, because mushrooms are fruits. Now, you do want to leave some fruits to seed, right? So if you pick, if you think about the mushroom as the fruit, then the mycelium, which is, you can think about it as like the root structure, but it's not a root, is the rest of the tree. And that's going to be underground or in the bark that the mushroom is growing out of, or it's going to be hidden from wherever the mushroom is growing out of. That is what you don't want to damage. So when you pick a mushroom, make sure to cut it at the base and don't pull it, because if you pull it, you risk damaging that mycelium structure and you risk it not fruiting next year, or just you know, getting sick or exposed or whatever. So that's the one thing I would say with foraging mushrooms. Cut it at the base and don't pull it out from the ground. And it just helps you not have dirt in your mushrooms and things like that. So, like, same thing with picking flowers though. You don't want to pick every single mushroom from your patch every single year, because yes, the mycelium will produce new fruits, but eventually, you know, it's going to die. Everything's going to die eventually. And so you want at least some seasons, you want the mushroom to go to spore. And spores are essentially the seeds of mushrooms. Now, I don't know if you've seen a mushroom spore, but it has a bunch of spores, like millions and millions of little, it's just like a cloud. So just make sure if you have a patch of things, you leave some. If you have a big mushroom, leave a chunk of it to keep growing. And definitely don't pull it, just cut it at the base. And that's all I really have to say about mushrooms. But we have top left.
Also, in that same vein, I've read that when you go to pick mushrooms, don't use a plastic bag. Use a basket or use a net or something. Is that silly or?
A little bit. So sure, you know, it doesn't hurt to use a paper bag or a mesh bag or something. But they say it's because it spreads spores. The spores, once you pull that thing out the ground, the spores are falling. And some mushrooms you actually don't want to pick when they're sporing. Like the top right is a giant puffball. And puffballs, you have to check, you have to cut them through and make sure they're white in the middle before you can eat them, that they hadn't gotten a spore yet. So it's more important to make sure the mycelium is intact and that you don't harvest every season all of them from a patch. Because eventually, you know, whenever that mycelium dies, then there might not be any spores though. But no, don't worry about it. Of course, it's better, you know, to not use plastic. And it also helps the mushroom, especially if you're on a longer hike. If you have plastic, it'll get sweat and you might get soggy. And in a paper bag or in a mesh bag, there'll be air circulation. But as far as spreading spores and stuff, it's a little silly for that reasoning, at least.
Sure. And guys, we're talking about finding somebody that can do more of a mushroom talk too.
I just started mushroom foraging last year, so I'm still new to it. But
that's a whole different science, mycology and all that. There's a lot more room of error there, I would think too.
Not really.
Really?
As long as you avoid certain species, as long as you avoid amanitas, which have the deadly ones, your death angel and your death cap, or what's it called, destroying angel and death caps and stuff. That's what I thought too. But if you look at like these ones, there's no mistaking it. Like there is nothing that looks like lion's mane, like the top left. There's nothing that looks like John Hopwell on the top right. Chanterelles, there's one look-alike, but once you know how to differentiate it, easy peasy. And then wood ear, bottom right is when your jelly mushrooms. All your jelly mushrooms are some, you know, edible in some way. Maybe not great, but So it's, yeah, you just gotta avoid certain species, certain families.
If y'all never tried lion's mane, it is like nothing else. I found it last year for the first time and brought it home and cooked it after an unsuccessful deer hunt. But it tastes like a crab cake. And it has the texture of a crab cake. It just doesn't comprehend in your mind that those tastes and flavors are coming out of a mushroom that you picked off a dead oak tree.
And it's great for your brain. That's what it's famous for. You make teas out of it. It's good for anything neurological or in your nervous system, really. I mean, obviously, with long-term use, you're not going to just drink it once and stuff, but it actually has like legitimate scientific research on it. One of the few things wild that has that type of research. So definitely look for it. It's hard to miss. So the thing is with lion's mane, I think a lot of people miss it because normally when you look for mushrooms, you're looking in the ground. Lion's mane is going to grow up in trees. Now this one and this picture, I got very lucky. It was right at my like height, my head height. But most of them are way up there, and you look up there and you're like, I can't get that, and it's it's tragic.
I found it on dead oaks on the ground. But it's like, you know, really big oak tree and like on the underhang, so it's hanging, but it's still on the ground. But I've only seen it. You know, it's gonna. And dead oaks are the only places I've seen it. At least I only looked in the low country of South Carolina. I don't know about
that's a common one, yeah. All right, so last thing, how to start for yourself. So for plants, I'd recommend some apps. So Plant ID, or picture this is I use often and Seek by iNaturalist. I also use. The thing is with those, never rely on it completely. Use it as a step in the right direction. Now, for these plants, they're pretty much always going to be right. You know, assuming you took a good picture. But still, you just never know. Again, because these things don't have like lookalikes that are really like that. So, but still, and the second best thing is to verify is to go join Facebook ID groups for your area, or even not for your area. Just, you know, mention what area you're in when you ask. The only better thing than that is to have actually someone with you, but that's hard to find sometimes. So definitely join as many Facebook ID groups as you can. Now books are a little hard to rely on as far as field guides because generally they use flowers to sort things, and that's how you know families of things like the violets. You know, they had different colors, but they look the same, so you know that's in the violet family. And yeah, so but these plants especially aren't always flowering. In fact, they're flowering less, you know, a short part of their life. So it's a little hard to use books until you have an idea. So if you go, you know, for example, take a picture of something with one of these plant IDs that tells you this is chickweed, you're like, okay, let me check. You can Google what chickweed look like. You can ask your Facebook groups, or you can go into your book and look at chickweed and say, okay, that matches. And your book will tell you what things to look for, or how the leaves are structured, how the leaves are shaped, how the stem is, and it smells, or things like that. And now for trees, field guides are great. The way they're organized, you know, it'll tell you, you have to kind of learn what does a lobed leaf look like, mean? What does a compound or simple leaf mean, and things like that. But once you get those down, and the book will tell you, and then you just kind of follow along. Now for mushrooms, apps suck. Now, I don't know if they have a new one since I've looked, but the apps just absolutely suck. So you do want to get familiar with terminology of mushroom, like parts of a mushroom, like gills, annulus, I don't know how to pronounce that, vulva, cap, etc. And then books are great for mushrooms because they'll tell you, you know, does your mushroom look like this? Is it white? Does it have, you know, attached gills or this and that? And that's why you need to learn. Yep, I have that one actually.
I put it in the notes.
And another one is National Audubon Society, or I was going to write that one. Actually, I just forgot to add it. So yeah, National Audubon Society, or the one that Morgan put in the notes. Those are the best ones, but I'm sure there's more. And then same thing, Facebook ID groups. Facebook ID groups helped me immensely when I couldn't find it in my book, or I just wasn't sure between two ones in my book. And I was like, okay, I know this is either this or this, but I can't figure it out. Facebook ID groups, I cannot like use it. Now there'll be drama and stuff always, but just ignore it. And there are really some knowledgeable people out there. But remember to check them too. So if they say it's something, you go look that up and make sure. And yeah, okay, I do want to take you guys out on a walk.
One thing to remember, oil and water mixed together make mold and bacteria and stuff, and it's bad. So when you're infusing oils, you have to use dried plant matter. So you just dry your plants, and then you just shove a jar full of it. Once they're fully dried, I don't like using dehydrators for plants, but you can if you want to make it quicker. I just like air drying them, no heat. And then you put it in a jar, glass jar preferably, and then you just fill the top with whatever oil you want. Don't use coconut oil, use avocado oil is great, olive oil, your lighter oils. And then just make sure it's covered. Make sure no plant matter is sticking out or it will mold. And then you just leave it in the dark, covered, for about a month. Now, if you have one of those heat seed germinating pads, those are really, really great, and it'll get much more in there. And you want to take those heat germinating pads, they're really low heat, and you want to wrap it around the jar or set it under the jar or something to add a little bit of heat to that oil, just a little bit, and that'll really make things better. But if you don't have that, it's no big deal. You can just infuse them. You don't want it to be cold, so you do want to keep them a little warm, and definitely dark. Dark is key. Always keep your oils in the dark. And then after a month or so, or maybe 5 weeks, if it's a little cooler, you want to strain it out. You don't want to leave it in there too long. Just strain it, and then store your oil. And that oil, so long as no water gets into it, eventually the oil might go rancid. So whenever your olive oil goes rancid, just smell it. But that oil will stay good for a while. I'll test you guys. What do you think? Here's the leaf, and then here's all of it. Here's the almost flower. I'll find a bigger leaf, but you see the sharp edges. And right next to it, here's a mock strawberry. It vined out, but there's the flower. It's supposed to have 5 petals. It's missing one. And then there's the leaf. Oh, this one's about to fruit. It's starting to fruit. Chickweed's starting to they've gone to flower, and they're seeding now. So they're starting to yellow. Oh, here's the cleavers are coming in. I got to harvest these soon. They're almost, they're seeding. I need to harvest some. It's going out, not henbit. I'm sorry. Purple dead nettle. I wish I had henbit here to show you guys. But it's going out, so it's light in color now, but here's the shape. And it's got that square stem that I can feel that you can't really see, maybe. But yeah, henbit it wouldn't have leaves like this that you can just pull out like that. It'd be the leaves going all the way around, kinda. It'll be separated, but it'll go all the way around, and they'll be they'll almost look like this, serrated kind of thing. But mint family too, also edible, similar benefits. It almost doesn't matter if you can't tell them apart, to be honest.